How Christina Sahardi won her suit against Anti-Flag frontman Justin Sane without ever going to court. Welcome back to the Ask Rusty podcast, where we break down legal topics in plain English so you can better understand your rights. I'm your host, attorney Rusty Messer with Big River Trial Attorneys in Baton Rouge. This week, we're answering a big question. What is a default judgment and how can it affect your case? And to help explain this, we're going to take a look at a recent high-profile lawsuit involving musician Justin Sane, who was formerly of the punk band Anti-Flag. In November 2023, a woman named Christina Sahardi filed a civil lawsuit in New York, and she accused Sane of rape and sexual assault during a concert encounter. And this happened back in 2010, when she was just 21 years old. Now, her lawsuit had some serious claims: assault, sexual battery, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and even negligence against others who allowed the conduct to happen. But here's the kicker. Sane never responded to the lawsuit. He didn't file an answer or any kind of motion in court. So what happens when a defendant just ignores the case? That's where a default judgment comes in. Because Sane didn't respond, because he didn't do anything, the court treated Sahardi's allegations like they were just admitted. So in July 2025, a judge awarded over $1.9 million in damages to Sahardi. That's money. Roughly $1.17 million in compensatory damages and another $750,000 in punitive damages, punishing Sane for his actions. So that is a serious judgment, and it all happened without a trial. So let's break this down. What is a default judgment? When somebody files a lawsuit, a defendant has a limited time to respond, usually 20 to 30 days in most states. If they don't, the court can declare them in default. At that point, the plaintiff can ask a judge to issue a default judgment, which is basically a legal win by forfeiture. Once that happens, a judge can award money damages or other relief based on the unchallenged claims and the evidence presented. So this is not just a New York thing. Here in Louisiana, we follow a similar process. If someone gets served with a lawsuit and doesn't answer, the court can rule against them, often for a lot of money. So what damages can be awarded in a civil rape case like Sahardi's? So in Sahardi's case, she asked for and got damages that included her medical expenses, her mental health costs. This is past and future. You can get lost income. You can get emotional distress and trauma damages. And you can get punitive damages to punish the misconduct in some states. So these are all examples of compensatory and punitive damages which are common in serious civil cases like rape, sexual battery, or assault, especially if the conduct was intentional. Now, it's not just enough to make the claims. You still have to prove your injuries. Now, this can be done with medical records, witness testimony, expert testimony about the care you're going to need. It can be done with photographs and even your own testimony. All right, so if you get a default judgment, what happens next? So the first thing to do is see if the defendant is going to agree to pay it. In this case, Sahardi's lawyers will likely start by sending a written demand to Sane with instructions on how to pay off the judgment. Sane might agree to pay it, or he might ignore it. If he does not agree to pay it, that is when collection starts. So with a default judgment, Sahardi's lawyers will likely start going after Sane's assets like real estate, bank accounts, possibly even future royalty payments from his music, or other income he may have. All right, let's talk about the legal process in general, how this process started, and the different steps in a civil lawsuit. So it starts off with filing. The plaintiff drafts and files a complaint, sometimes called a petition. So this is filed into court. But you can't stop there. The defendant has to be served with the paperwork. So step number 2 is service. Filing is not enough. Once the defendant is served, there is a time to respond. Again, often 20 to 30 days. Once that defendant is served, if they don't answer, they are at risk of a default judgment. They can either answer, admitting or denying the allegations, or they can file motions to challenge the allegations. So number 4 are motions. Step number 5 is what we call written discovery. This is where the parties are sending communications to each other to exchange information. After that, you go into depositions. This is where the parties put people under oath before a court reporter and they ask them questions to learn what their testimony might be or what they might know about the case. Then you have settlement negotiations. There's almost always an attempt to resolve cases without trial. But if you can't, then you get to the 8th step, which is a trial. If the parties are unable to agree on a settlement and there's no motion that's going to dismiss the case, it's time to go to trial and let a judge or a jury decide who is at fault and what the case is worth. In Sahardi's case, that 2nd step, service, happened, but that 3rd step of an answer or response did not happen. So why this matters, even in Baton Rouge, even though this case happened in New York, the legal principles apply in Louisiana too. So survivors of sexual assault have civil options, so even if criminal charges aren't filed, and for defendants, ignoring a lawsuit doesn't make it go away. It makes it worse. So the key takeaways from today's podcast. If you're a survivor, civil court may offer another path to justice, even years later. If you've been sued, do not ignore it. A default judgment can cost you big without you ever stepping foot into a courtroom. So everyone should understand that in a civil case, there are deadlines, there is a service of process requirement, there are other procedural rules that can affect your case, and if you have or think you may have a civil case, you should speak with an attorney about that case. If you have questions about default judgments or civil lawsuits in Louisiana, give us a call at Big River Trial Attorneys. We're here to help. And as always, send your legal questions for next week's episode of the Ask Rusty podcast. Until then, stay informed, stay empowered. Thanks for listening, and make sure to like and subscribe.